Hello and welcome to Build Series. I'm Laura Muraski with HuffPost. You know actress Marcia Gay Harden for her roles in Miller's Crossing, Mystic River, The First Wives Club, and 50 Shades of Grey, as well as her Oscar-winning part in Pollock. Now she's taking a starring turn in the new Lifetime film, Love You to Death. Take a look.
I don't know how God lets a child go through something like this.
Camile, you're too good.
You're my little angel. I'm gonna watch over you.
Sometimes I feel I've got to run away.
I have a very strong feeling Esme may have been misdiagnosed. I want to see Daddy.
Your mom was sick, not you.
I need you to rescue me. I do the talking.
Nothing's like you say it is.
Oh, baby. It hurts me to hurt you.
You are a sick girl. You're using me to make the world love you.
My tears, and that's love you to death.
All right, everyone, please welcome Marcia Gay Harden. Marcia, welcome back to Build. We're so excited to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I watched this film over the weekend. It's excellent, and you have a very complicated role, in this. Can you talk a little bit about the premise of your character and the story itself? Because it's inspired and based on a true story.
Yes, not the ideal mother.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree.
Yes.
So there's a mental illness called Munchausen by proxy, which I'd never heard about. I thought it was a city in Germany, actually, you know. So, but I learned about it through this case, and I think a lot of America learned about it sort of through this case because the case ends in a murder. The mom, my character, basically keeps her daughter sick her entire life. The daughter's misdiagnosed at an early age with leukemia, but instead I think she had sepsis or some leukemia-like symptoms. And nevertheless, the mom keeps her sick, gives her cancer medications, insists that something's wrong with the daughter, ultimately puts a feeding tube in her, has her salivary glands operated on, says the daughter's mentally disabled, keeps her in a wheelchair her entire life. And yet, at some point, obviously, the daughter knows she can walk. And so as she grows up, she's caught in this web of lies that is her life at home. And when she becomes a teenager, the hormones kick in and she wants to have a boyfriend. And ultimately, she meets a couple guys on a Christian dating site. And the last one that the mother finds out and brings her back home, always insisting that she's 4 years younger than she really is. So she's telling the guys that you're with a minor. And the mom gets the girl back home. And the last one that she met, she plotted the mother's murder with. So now the real girl, Gypsy's in prison. Her boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, is in prison, and of course, Dee Dee, my character, is dead. We did the Lifetime movie is inspired by. It's not detail for detail exactly what the real story is, but and actually the real story is even darker on some level than what we did. You know, when you find out about sort of there's a lot of cosplay and role playing and some sexual oddities, but yeah, that's the story.
That's a
Light
story.
little story.
It's
Yeah.
But it's one of those stories that it's informational too, because like you said, you didn't know this mental disorder just existed.
Well, just today alone, it's so interesting. I met a doctor who said a lot of the cases that I see are the children victims of Munchausen by proxy. And she was a dermatologist. I was like, really? Why is that? And she says, well, it shows on the skin, maybe in eczema or in other ways, or the anxiety, or maybe the parent is giving them something. And even in where I live in California, there was a case of someone who is known in the community in which I live, who had fed their child through a feeding tube feces to keep their child sick. And so it's, you know, I'd never heard of it. And now, as always, when you learn of something, it seems like every place you look, there's a reference to it. So it is something quite serious. And in our case, as Emily Skeggs, the amazing Emily Skeggs points out, you only know about ours because it ended in a murder.
Right.
Think of all the ones that don't end in a murder, right? It's quite serious.
So at the same time, you're sort of raising awareness about this illness and through the film too. So it's an interesting case. How much research did you do ahead of this?
Well, when you're playing a real life person, you just feel a huge onus to be as true to them as you can. So there's a documentary called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest that I saw that, which was very interesting because it answered some questions that I wanted to be answered, which was, what was she like before?
Right.
Did she just walk into this, and did this first occur with the daughter, and then you find out that she was suspected of possibly having poisoned her stepmother when she was caring for the stepmother. So somehow using her, I think she'd worked like as a nurse's aide or something, somehow using her medical knowledge to other people's detriment. So there was something off. Her brothers and sisters were like, she was a little off before. And I watched the documentary. I spoke to as many people as I could. I spoke to doctors. Emily Skeggs is a like true crime junkie, so she would send me all this stuff. And the more she would send me, the more I'd be like, we have to put that in our story. That's really great. But our story was already written, and we would put some details in, but it was already prescribed what it would be.
At the same time, you also go through a physical transformation. You look very different, as you could see in the clip we showed, than you do right now. What was that like, getting into the character and physically?
Well, for me, it was absolutely necessary. I think as an actor, sometimes you approach a role just from the inside out, and they look like you. I mean, maybe the hairdo is different or something, but it's about an internal. This was really, there was a whole internal world that I was able to access by understanding the physical world. And she was, as you saw, she was a large woman. In the end of her life, if anyone goes online and you see the pictures of her online, she was like unhealthy, kind of bloated steroid almost. And so it was the way her body was not healthy. She was not a healthy woman. And to me, it seemed like the more she sort of sucked life from the child, like the bigger she just blew up. And that for me was that I thought there was a burden to her, what she was lugging around with her, the burden of guilt, the burden of this life that she had taken from the other child. So I wanted that to be true to who she was. She kind of limped when she walked, and that was really important in the wig. And I had these, they're like eyebrow wigs. You've never heard of them, but I'd never seen them before. But they're like a little piece of lace with hair on them, and then they would put them on my eyebrow. And suddenly, like everything came together, and I had the bushy eyebrows. Because if you see pictures of the real character, her name is Dee Dee Blanchard, if you see pictures of her in her younger life, she was actually a beauty queen. She won a beauty contest, and she took care of herself in her younger life as she created this lie to the world. Whatever she stopped taking care of herself, and everything about her just changed. And that was fascinating to me, to try to understand what was that journey like. I also was really fascinated, and of course I'll never know, what was it like at home?
Right.
Because we only know from the daughter's perspective. So I wanted to know, do you sit around the house and does mom go, hey, honey, the shades are all drawn, sweetheart. You can walk out today. Come on out here and get your breakfast, honey. The shades are drawn. But later on, make sure you put the sad face on. What was the building? What was the screenplay? What did it say? What was the directions for what did they say to each other? And we only know now from the daughter's point of view, and the daughter's in jail. So what her story is going to be geared toward, rightly so, her victimization and her innocence. But there was some collusion, I feel, in the house, and that was really interesting to me.
Right, what was it like through that lens?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked how the film sort of told it through two perspectives.
Yeah.
It really enhanced it, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, the first perspective is not necessarily my character's perspective. People say it is, but I say it's not, because we don't have my character to talk to. You don't go in her brain. The first perspective is what the audience saw, what the world saw. And what the world saw was this mother who was sad and cried for her poor daughter, and showed up to the award ceremonies, and the daughter would get the best cancer child, whatever they were, and the mother was just so caring and so loving and so sacrificing, as if she was sacrificing herself, but really her daughter was the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
And so that's what the world saw. And then in the second half of our film, you see it from the daughter's point of view, and she's saying, you thought this moment was me, being cared for by my mother, but this is really what it was. I was being abused. And so I think that was interesting. It's kind of like that Rashomon, the different perspectives.
And you got to show off your acting chops, kind of showing off like both of those sort of aspects of this one character
Yeah.
in one short film, essentially.
If you watch it carefully, you'll see that there's a couple scenes that that are the different perspective scenes, and you pick back up with those same scenes. So you'll see that, like maybe I'm wearing overalls with a flowered shirt in the first one to make you think how much sweeter I am, but in the second one, the flowered shirt has become like a striped shirt to make you think how jagged I am, whatever. So the perspective, as is memory changes. You're like, no, they were definitely in a green shirt. No, I swear they were in a red shirt. So the memory of it changes as well if you watch it closely. Some of the props, the purses change, and the whole, and the performances change. That's very perceptive of you. I'm much nicer in the first half, and in the second half, she's much crueler.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, far from any mom that hopefully we will have to encounter, but very, very serious topic that we're talking about here. You've been in part of Lifetime before. This is not your first Lifetime film. Lifetime is doing a lot these days, especially with female characters. Would you agree?
Well, they always have.
Yeah.
They've always been a woman's network. They've always, quote, believed in women, that have a big sign on Sunset that says believe, and how we believe in women. And all the pictures of it are made up of different women who are in maybe shows this year or over the years. And I'm in the very bottom of the B. And I was like driving, I was still kind of thrilled to see I'm in the bottom of the B. But they always have. I think what they're doing is what's happening in America and kind of possibly around the world is there's a sense of the stories getting more truthful, more frank in a way that we don't have to gloss them as much. So the women aren't just the women in distress; they're women heroes. And I think that is has to do with the voice of all women everywhere. All women claiming their actual equality and their actual strength. And it's not that we didn't claim it before, but now we can all agree that there's a clarion ring to the young ones, the teenagers, the women in my age group down. Everyone is just saying, we are here, time's up, all of that. And I think it's really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, beyond Lifetime, how do you feel like the overall industry is treating that and women behind the scenes, in front of the camera?
Yeah, I think women are saying, why can't I be the producer? I mean, when you look at Reese Witherspoon and, Marie Bello and all these people, why can't I produce it? Why can't I do it? I will do it. So it's really not asking for the reins to be given anymore because they often won't be given. I mean, it's fun to drive the pony yourself, right? So it's saying, I'm taking them. And you know what? I'll buy my own pony if I have to, so I can ride my own pony. And I think that's what's happening is people are just saying, I don't need an invite.
Right, absolutely.
I belong.
Absolutely. And you having been in the industry for many years now, how do you find, you're very busy, how do you find the roles have changed for you as you've grown in the industry? And it seems like you're very busy and that you're not short, there's no
I'm
shortage
a
of
single
roles.
mom.
Yeah.
I'm a single working mom with 3 kids to support.
Yeah.
So what I do is work. I'm not super picky. I used to be more picky. I'm not real picky. I work but I pick when I do, what I do want is that there can be something illuminating about the character that I play. So in this case, this woman, I mean, anybody who saw her would go, what a monster. And you wouldn't be wrong. But that particular monster is human, as are all the monsters we know in life. They're human. I think what is especially, and I was kind of like, well, why is everyone saying she's more of a monster than like the guy who just murdered those 2 parents and kidnapped the girl, and the girl ended up, I forget the name, Clarissa maybe, am I right? I forget her name, but why, like any other monster, why is any other, well, it's because she's a mother, and it's her own child that she's doing this to. And it's that this mental illness has had her basically use her daughter as the sacrificial lamb or her meal ticket, and the daughter is in the prison of home. So, I mean, my job was to humanize her, to make you see the desperation and to make you go, thankfully, there, but for the grace of God go I. But that could be a neighbor. If you dismiss it, if you go, could never be me, could never be a neighbor, I don't know people like that, so let me just watch this movie. I mean, I think that's a lot of sort of Marvel superhero action movies they're not, we can accept it because they're not really people that we grew up next to. In this case, she needs to be someone you grew up next to and that you went, wow, I see that lady in Walmart and and that daughter, is that real?
Yep. I think you really achieved that by humanizing this character.
I
And
hope
it's
so.
like I said from the start, it was a very complicated character,
Yeah.
and so you feel for her in some ways as well, even though she can be the quote unquote monster.
I don't want you to feel sorry for her
Yeah.
necessarily. I don't care if you like
Yeah.
her or not. I just care that you recognize her. And and in our particular story, like I said, it doesn't go inside her brain. So it's not her going, you know, oh, I have this disease and it's not her therapy through it or anything. You don't really understand it, but hopefully you just see someone who is desperate and burdened by life. You know, there's also an interesting question. Why was the medical industry so fooled by this?
Yeah.
Well, doctors are putting feeding tubes into this little girl and operating on her. What the hell is that about? Like, how could that happen? And you go, okay, well, when you go into a hospital and you say, I have a problem, they're geared to help you solve whatever problem you have. And in this case, the girl is having to be quiet. Mom is saying, be quiet. And mom is saying she does have the problem. And she's a little bit, she doesn't talk so good when I'm not around. So let me tell you what's wrong with her. Yep, I give you permission to do this exploratory surgery or whatever it was. I mean, it's a heinous idea.
Yeah, it makes you scratch your head. You mentioned action films. We're going to see you in an action film not too long from now, a Netflix film, a remake of Point Blank.
Yes.
What was it like to be involved in this? Because I know you're like, you know, you're carrying a gun. You're,
Oh my God,
you're
that's
not,
what it
you're
is.
not messing around in this film.
Like you learn how much you don't know when
Yeah.
you do an action film. I'm thinking, I know I can do this. And they're like, oh my God, like there's a CIA guy, he was like special ops CIA, and he'd be on the set with everybody showing us how to use guns. And I think, I know how to use a gun. I was on Law and Order, whatever, you know, or like, you know, I do target practice. So I was always making the mistake when you have a shotgun of doing like this. So it was a wing. My wing was up, and he would be like, elbow down, girl, elbow down. So I had to get used to holding it in here and holding the gun here. But then I, you know, am an endowed lady, so I don't have, so it was harder for the gun. So there's just all these things that you learn about yourself. And you're like, this is just, it's hard, but it was fun. And also I had my character in kind of little heels because she didn't know that all this was going to happen, that she needed to be running around with shotguns and all things during the day. So she had like little heels come into the office, and then all of a sudden, bang, they're out in the field. And so that was kind of fun, running around on these cobblestone streets with shotguns and guns. And all of my dialogue was MF, MF, MF. Put your hands in the air, MF. Do this, MF. You know, and it was like, the kids were like, Mom, you're used to that. You talk like that all the time. I was like, this is kind of true. So that was really fun. And I think that's, you know, I don't like to get to a point in my work or in my career where I would say, no, I'd never do that. My very first film I ever did was Miller's Crossing. Right. And Albert Finney was in that film. And he was like, darling, it's all about doing something new. It's about learning something new from new directors. And I think I've just always kept that close to me, that it is about exploring something new. And so for me, an action film was fun. If it was a Marvel action film, that would be fun. It is fun to just branch out.
That's great, and it's so cool that you still get to do that after having done so much and having so many versatile roles throughout your storied career. Miller's Crossing, I mean, that was many consider it was your first film, but also a breakout film, a Coen Brothers film,
Right.
still very highly respected, kind of a cult film in many ways at this point, right?
It's a beautiful film,
It's
yes.
wonderful. You were still, like, after that happened, you were still waitressing and doing other things. Is that correct?
You know your homework.
Yeah.
You're so right.
Yeah.
I catered for this company. Are there actors in the room here? Anybody know? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I catered for this company called Great Performances, and that's how I was making my money. And then I went and did Miller's Crossing, and of course, you make nothing on your first movie, and whatever I did make, I was like, I'm paying off my school loans, so paid that off right away. And so then I had no money. So I went back to babysitting, I went back to catering, went back to auditioning, you know, after doing a movie like that, because it takes a year from when you shoot the movie for it to come out. And it's just how the life was. I feel like for me, it's always whatever golden ship you think I'm on, I'm probably not. I'm probably paddling with some oars and, you know, trying to just keep everybody afloat. Right. But it's okay. It's a good, believe me, I've had a blessed life. But yeah, after Miller's Crossing, I went back to babysitting and catering and was glad to do it.
But then you went on to win an Oscar. Did that change things? Did that
I did not cater anymore.
Okay, that's good.
Except to my kids.
Okay.
Right?
A few years later, you won, several years later, you won the Oscar.
Yeah.
And here we are in Oscar season. Do you still kind of pinch yourself like, whoa, That was surprising to me.
It's a great question. I do.
Yeah.
It happened. I wasn't nominated for a Golden Globe. I wasn't nominated for a SAG. I was nominated for an Academy, and I won. And so I look back and I'm like, wow, that happened to you. You were so lucky. You were so blessed, and all the stars aligned, and that happened to you. Because today, I think, I don't know that that would happen to me now. And it seems like it's a different world. It seems astonishing that it did.
Yeah.
And wonderful that it did. It's great it's in my purse in the back if anyone wants to see it.
So where do you
to carry it around me all the time? And then I use a deep voice when I talk about it, right?
Well, you'll forever be introduced as the Oscar winner, Marcia Gay
that's
Harden,
lovely.
right?
Yeah.
Where do you keep the Oscar?
I introduced myself as that, didn't you know? Well, it's actually on a bookshelf at home with all the kids' trophies from basketball and soccer, and all the trophies, the family trophies. It's right there with all the family trophies.
Oh, that's great. Well, you were nominated for another Oscar for Mystic River,
Yes.
which is one of the best films of all.
That's
like,
a
one of my
beautiful
favorite
film,
films.
yeah.
I mean, what a cast, right? I mean, does that still hold a very close place in your heart? That
Well,
movie?
it's such an interesting film because I don't know if anybody's seen it or not, but in the film, every good and moral decision gets someone hurt.
Yeah.
So in the film, there's the girl, look, if you hit someone in a car and it's night, you're supposed to get out and make sure they're okay and call for 911, and the girl does that, and it's a ruse. Two boys, there's two cops come by. One looks like he's a priest, one looks like he's a cop. They say, get in the car. When I grew up, if someone looks like a cop says, get in the car, you get in the car. You don't go, let me see your ID first. You might not be what you think. So you would just get in the car. And in this case, the boys get in the car, and it's not what they think it is, and harm comes to them. So, in every case, these decisions that were seemingly moral, you get in trouble. And I think that was something that Clint Eastwood was investigating in the movie. And Lahane is investigating in the book.
Yep.
What is the moral right in a way? And also the fact that who do you go to? When I finally go to tell somebody, an authority figure, that I am sure my husband committed a murder. Look, first of all, if someone in your family did commit a murder, would you go to an authority figure? And they say people typically won't tell on their family. You'll protect your family, right? So when my character does, which is the moral thing to do, she goes to the wrong person
Yep.
because she doesn't trust the cops. She trusts the leader of the neighborhood. So she goes to Sean Penn. So it's all of these things I think are kind of wonderful that Clint Eastwood is exploring. What is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do?
You've gotten to work with some really amazing directors throughout your career.
I
That's
have.
for sure.
I really have.
Phenomenal. Is there a role that you haven't taken on, or a type of film or a television show you're like, I want to try my hand at that?
Well, I love period films. I love, Game of Thrones-y things. I love that. And it would be fantastic to be in all of that garb of a time. And, that's really something I love to do.
All right. You wrote a book last year.
I
and
did. I
It
was here talking about it, yes.
And it's about Alzheimer's and inspired by your mom and
Yes.
everything. What was it like to put that on paper? And do you see yourself writing a book, another type of book down the line?
I do see myself writing more. It was really liberating to write. It's really fun to put words together. It's fun to put alliteration together. It's fun to create a kind of poetry. And in this case, it was about my mother who had Alzheimer's and recently passed away. And so that in and of itself was a liberating gift to give to her. I don't know what I would write next, but I absolutely think I will write next.
All right. Well, we have that to look forward to. We have a Twitter question, actually.
Okay, sure.
So, for your preparation to play Dee Dee, it was required to talk to Esme. And was it required to talk to Esme, who was your daughter in the film, in prison? And would you have gone if you could have?
Yeah, if it was required, I absolutely would have. I think that part of the fact that this is a real story, that the girl's really in prison, and she really will be defending herself to get out. I have to respect the space and whatever she needs to do that, and I wouldn't want to harm her case in any way. I do see her as a victim of, ever since she was a child, she was told to lie. So what were her choices? I mean, what audiences don't know is that she actually, with these Christian boys that she'd met on the Christian dating site, she had escaped. Did I say that earlier? She escaped twice, and mom had gone and said, "You're with a minor." And they were like, "What?" Mom said she's a minor. She said, I'm not a minor. I have a card to tell you I'm not a minor. And Mom said, she's mentally addled. You're with a minor. And I do believe the next step would have been the mom keeping the feeding tube in. She kept the feeding tube in. I think it would have been her feeding her something that mentally addled her forever so that the mom had to take care of her forever. And see what a great person I am taking care of her forever. And she's just mentally disabled. I'm sure, it just feels, I don't have proof. So it's maybe horrible to say, but that's what it feels like to me.
Right.
I would have met her, but she had a lot of interviews with Dr. Phil and other people. And so I also got the gist of not just how she was talking and defending herself, what she would say and allow for, and what Dr. Phil and other people are kind of feeding. Like, you can see when they ask the question, they're sort of almost feeding an answer in a way. Like, you know, they might say, why didn't you escape? And she would say, well, honestly, it just never occurred to me. And I would watch and I go, okay, okay. If I talked to her in prison, would I have been allowed to say, come on, we want to tell the true story? It's not the right time.
Right.
She's not out.
Yep. Yep. Very, very good question and very good film. It premieres tomorrow night on Lifetime at 8 p.m. Check it out. Marcia Gay Harden, what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Give it up one more time,
Nice
everyone.
to be here. Thank you.